Have you ever felt abandoned by everyone, even by those who said they were by your side in the worst moments? Have you ever noticed how, on the most difficult days of your life, many people simply disappear? And when the pain seems unbearable, who stays with you? Maybe today you are experiencing exactly that, struggling with your own tears, seeking strength to continue, but feeling alone, even in faith. But what if I told you that there was a real example, lived by someone who faced abandonment, pain, and fear, and chose to remain faithful until the end? This is the story of John, the only apostle who did not turn his back on Jesus in his darkest hour. While the others fled, he stayed. As everyone retreated, he approached the cross. And for this reason, he was chosen by Jesus for something sacred. There is something in this fidelity that many have not yet seen, but that can radically transform your walk with God. In this video, you will discover the secret to unwavering loyalty. You will understand why John was so different and how this difference brought him even closer to the heart of Christ. If you watch until the end, you will not only know this story, you will see yourself in it. You will realize that what hurts you today can become precisely what elevates you. Now tell me, are you ready to be someone who stands firm even when everyone gives up? If your answer is yes, you can prove it now in the comments. Write with faith, "I will remain next to the cross." And also say where you are watching from. We want to know how far this message is reaching. Take advantage and subscribe to the channel, because here we share words that strengthen your faith and push you towards your purpose. Let's go on this journey together. You know that moment in life when everything seems to be falling apart around you? When even those closest to you move away without explanation and silence takes over what was once full of words and company. It's on these days that the soul cries out for help, not because we don't have faith, but because we feel invisible in pain. And it is exactly in these moments that we need to look at the cross and realize who was there and who wasn't. John was not just a name among the 12, he was the only one left. While the others ran, he remained. While the disciples' feet followed opposite paths, John's steps were steady at the foot of the cross. And that says a lot more than 1,000 words, because true fidelity does not need to be announced. It reveals itself in the silence of pain. João had no more guarantees than the others. He was also afraid. He was also the target of persecution. I also had reasons to run, but something about him kept him there. And maybe you who are watching now understand exactly what it is like to be in that place. Remain when everyone is gone. Love when there is no return. Being loyal when it only costs you and nothing rewards you. You look around and ask yourself, why was I the only one left? Why didn't anyone else have the courage? And why does God allow me to bear all this alone? The answer is in John. Whoever remains carries something that others were unable to bear. Those who remain are entrusted with missions that only those close to Jesus can understand. When he saw John there, he didn't need to explain anything. He just looked and entrusted him with his greatest treasure, his mother. This was not a symbolic gesture, it was a spiritual surrender. Because Jesus knew whoever remains in pain is worthy of taking care of that which is sacred. And maybe you are also being prepared for something like this. The pain you face today is not a punishment, it is a summons, a silent call to remain. To continue when there is no more strength, to love when there is no more applause, to obey when there are no witnesses, and in that place, where it seems like no one sees you, it is precisely where the sky observes you most closely. João did not become a hero in human eyes. He was not celebrated at the moment, but heaven recorded his faithfulness, and eternity recognized him. And maybe this is your story too, not the spotlight, but the constancy, not fame, but presence. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to stay where God has placed you, because whoever remains when everyone leaves also remains in the heart of God. But why is it so difficult to be this, Joan? Why do we have such a tendency to run away from pain, discomfort, exposure? Because our flesh cries out for protection, while our spirit cries out for purpose. John chose the purpose. He chose to be close, even though he knew it could cost him his life. And in doing so, he teaches us that presence is worth more than security, that true love doesn't take risks, but gives itself anyway. Perhaps today, you are at a personal cross. Perhaps your pain is silent, your sacrifice is invisible, your tears hidden, and no one knows what you've been through to stay strong. But God knows. And if you can remain, even without understanding, even without seeing results, even without having guarantees, you will be at the center of His will, because God entrusts missions of eternity to people who don't run away when pain hits. John stayed, and that was enough for the story to change. The question is, will you stay too? John's faithfulness on the cross did not arise by chance, nor was it built in the midst of chaos. It was born from intimacy. John was the disciple who chose to be close. Close in details, close at meals, close in moments when others still didn't know what to think. While many admired Jesus from a distance, John approached. He was not content to listen from afar. He wanted to understand the heart. And that is why, in that supper that preceded the cross, it was John who leaned on the Master's chest. This simple gesture says a lot. While the others argued about who was the greatest, John just sat back. He knew that greatness is not in position, but in proximity. Many want Jesus' miracles, but few desire his heart. John chose the heart, and whoever knows the heart of Christ does not run away when it is pierced, because Jesus' pain also hurts those who truly love him. John was not strong by nature. He was intimate, and intimacy sustains when strength fails. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to abandon something you don't know deeply? That's why so many give up on faith, because they know about God, but they don't really know him. Joan was not just a follower, he was a friend. And friendship with Christ was what kept him standing when others fell. John saw Jesus' face up close, heard his heartbeat. He was touched not just by words, but by silent gestures, and that made all the difference when the cross rose. Perhaps this is the missing key in your spiritual journey. Intimacy, not theological knowledge, not repetitive rituals, but a living presence, real relationship. Intimacy with God is not built in crowds, but in closed rooms, in moments of silence, in the moments when you choose to listen instead of speaking. John teaches us that whoever leans today remains tomorrow. Whoever approaches today does not run away when the cross appears. And why does this matter so much? Because we will all, at some point, face crosses, difficult situations, losses, abandons, betrayals. And in these moments, what will sustain you is not the emotion of a cult or the fervor of an event. That's how much you know the voice of Jesus. It's how much you trust him. It's how much you've already laid your soul on his heart. John had already done this, and so when the world shook, he stood. There is something powerful about being close. Have you ever felt when someone understands you without having to say anything? When just looking conveys support? John was that look at Jesus, and perhaps today, Jesus is looking for someone with that kind of faithfulness. Someone who is willing to listen to your pain, taking care of what he loves, not to run when everything gets dark. Joan didn't need the courage of a crowd. He was intimate enough not to run away. Think about your spiritual life now. Do you know God, or have you just heard of him? Have you ever had moments of deep silence in his presence where no words were needed? Have you ever felt his touch on your spirit when everything around you seemed cold? Because it is in these moments that true faith is born, not in the noise, not in the hustle and bustle, but in stillness. John lived it. Therefore, he not only remained, he was entrusted, because Jesus only gives what is precious to those who have already proven his love. Intimacy is not built in a day, But it starts with a choice, to be close, choosing the presence of God when everything in you wants to run in another direction. João made this choice, and it was what sustained him. Maybe today you need to make that same choice. Perhaps your spirit is asking for more than answers. He is crying out for presence, by depth, for a place of real encounter with the heart of God. And if you hear that call, if you respond with dedication and constancy, you too will be able to stand tall, even when everything around you falls. Remaining is noble, but remaining alone is a weight that few are willing to carry. João experienced this weight. While the other disciples disappeared, while fear silenced once brave voices, John remained. And there was no crowd to applaud him, no words of comfort, no hugs of recognition. He remained in the silence of the cross, in the discomfort of exposure, at the risk of being associated with a convicted man. This is the pain of those who don't run away, the emptiness around, the judgmental gaze of others, and the loneliness that seems to whisper that you are wrong for still being there. How many times have you felt this? That remaining firm in your faith, maintaining your principles, refusing to take shortcuts, and continuing to pray even without answers, puts you in an uncomfortable position before the world. Sometimes, even in front of the church itself, the look of people who don't understand your delivery. Judgment disguised as advice, criticism disguised as concern. John saw all of this, and yet it stayed, because those who have conviction don't need an audience to continue. This loneliness that accompanies the faithful is not punishment, it is a sign of separation. God separates to trust, and those who remain even lonely are those in whom he deposits his greatest revelations. João didn't know he would be remembered for this gesture. He had no idea that centuries later millions would speak of his fidelity. He just chose to love without applause. He chose to honor without witnesses. And that's how heaven moves, recognizing attitudes that men don't see. But it's not easy. The soul groans, the heart doubts, the mind screams, trying to convince you that it would be better to give up. And yet, you stay. Because something deeper holds you back. It's not logic, it's not a reward, it's love. Love that doesn't need a return. Love that doesn't give up when it's hurt. Love that doesn't withdraw even when no one else believes. João personifies this love. And this love, even in the midst of pain, is where eternal alliances are born. Perhaps today you are surrounded by this same loneliness, carrying a cross that is not yours. Enduring processes that no one understands, praying for people who have forgotten you, serving faithfully in a place that few value. And tiredness arrives. Discouragement tries to set in. But there is something you need to remember. You are not alone. Heaven sees you, God contemplates you, and Jesus is closer now than ever. Because it was there, in that moment of extreme pain, that Jesus saw John. He did not ignore him. He didn't let it go unnoticed. At the height of his suffering, Jesus looked and spoke to him. He called him what he was. Behold your son. Behold your mother. John was seen. It was entrusted and it was honored, even alone, even in the middle of a horror scene. This teaches us that God speaks to those who remain. God gives sacred responsibilities to those who bear pain in silence. The world may not understand you. Your friends may abandon you. Your family may doubt it. But heaven knows who you are. Heaven knows your renunciations, your tears, your hidden choices. And that's enough. Don't expect earthly recognition to validate your loyalty. The heavens have more accurate records than any human applause. And there are promises reserved only for those who chose to remain, even if it cost them everything. John did not write any speeches at that time. He didn't preach. He didn't scream. It just stayed. And this stay was more powerful than words. Maybe you don't have the strength to do great things. Maybe all you can do today is stay strong. But understand, this is enough. Your permanence, even silent, is screaming in the spiritual world, and God is listening. The angels are recording, and your story is being written in silence. John experienced the loneliness of the faithful, but he also received the intimacy of heaven, and that's what awaits you. The cross can even keep crowds away, but it brings the heart closer to the Father. John remained, but that doesn't mean he was perfect. In fact, his loyalty was built in the midst of human frailties. John also made a mistake. He also had doubts. It was also impulsive. In one episode, he asked for fire to come down from heaven on those who did not follow Jesus. This shows that he, like all of us, had character flaws being shaped along the way, but what made Joan trustworthy wasn't his perfection. It was his decision to continue even when everything in him screamed to stop. It is common to think that only the strong remain, that only the spiritually superior are capable of supporting the processes. But the truth is that many who appear strong on the outside are fragile on the inside, and many who think they are weak are those who remain, even on their knees. Because staying is a daily choice, a choice that is renewed with each new day of struggle. Joan chose to remain, even without understanding everything, even scared, even at the risk of being rejected. This is the beauty of fidelity. It is born from decision, not from the absence of pain. And those who choose to be faithful, even while bleeding, carry within themselves a type of strength that the world does not understand. Maybe you think you don't have enough structure to continue. Maybe you look at yourself and see only limitations. But that's precisely where God builds loyalty, in hearts that recognize their weaknesses but still don't give up. Pedro denied it, Thomas doubted, Judas betrayed, but John stayed. Everyone had their weaknesses, everyone had their crisis, but everyone made a choice, and that choice defined his destiny. This shows us that our history with God is not condemned by our mistakes, but is rewritten based on our decisions. You don't have to be perfect to stay. You need to be sincere and decided. There needs to be a soul that, even when tired, gets up and says, "I'm still going to stay." Joan may have been impulsive in the past, but he was faithful in the most difficult moment. And this teaches us something powerful. God does not choose based on our past, but on our present heart. He sees who you are becoming. He sees the intentions behind your decisions. And even if your journey has been marked by failures, He continues to call you to remain, because He knows the potential in your faithfulness. How many times have we felt unworthy of continuing because of mistakes we made? How many times do we think we have failed too much to be trustworthy? But God does not work with condemnation. He works in restoration. John was transformed along the way, and it was his constancy, not his perfection, that took him to the foot of the cross. You don't need to hide your wounds. You just need to keep walking, even with them. John's faithfulness is a living testimony that God honors those who choose to stay, no because they have all the answers, but because they have a willing heart, a heart that, even in silence, says, "I'm not leaving." Maybe this is the decision you need to make today. Stop running away. Stop sabotaging yourself. Stop thinking that only the strongest deserve to continue. Fidelity is for everyone who decides to love, even when bleeding. You may have failed yesterday, but today it is still time to start over. He may have run away before, but today is the time to return. God did not call you to be perfect. He called you to be faithful. And this loyalty is built one day at a time. In each resignation, in every solitary prayer, in every step taken in the dark, in every yes said even through tears. Joan was not chosen because he was the most prepared. He was chosen because he remained, and you can be that someone too, someone who understands that loyalty does not depend on an impeccable history, but on a present decision, from a heart that, even though it is hurt, refuses to give up. Because you know that being with Jesus, even at the foot of the cross, is still better than any place far from Him. It doesn't matter how many times you fall. What matters is how many times you decided to stand. John stayed, not because he was invincible, but because he loved it, and true love always chooses to stay. While many tried to understand the cross with words, John understood it with silence. He made no speeches at that time. He did not confront the soldiers. He did not question the heavens. It just stayed, and that silence said it all. There is a strength that cannot be translated into words, a fidelity that reveals itself in silent presences. John teaches us that often the greatest proof of love is not what is said, but what is endured in silence. And perhaps more than any speech, it was this silence that touched Jesus' heart. The noise of the crucifixion was deafening. Nails, screams, jeers, pain tearing the air. But in the midst of all this, there was a silence that spoke louder, Joan's silence. That kind of presence that doesn't need to be announced to be perceived. And maybe you've already experienced this, being in pain and not wanting words, just someone to stay there. Don't run away. It doesn't explain to you, it just accompanies you. John did this to Jesus, and there is something sacred about that kind of faithfulness. This is the call for the intimate. Those who bear the pain of others without trying to justify it. Those who understand that at certain moments, nothing needs to be said, just meaning. Joan was not there to appear. He was not looking for a prominent place. He just was. And that was enough. Because the intimate know the time of silence. They know how to discern when to be silent and when to speak. They know that there are pains that can only be cured with company, not with explanations. Remaining silent at the foot of the cross is one of the most profound acts anyone can perform. Because it is not an empty silence, it is a silence full of love, full of empathy, full of reverence. Joan saw the blood, heard the insults, witnessed the abandonment, but it didn't move. Because intimates don't run when the pain intensifies. They stand firm, they feel together, they charge, even without touching. This is what John represents there. The friend who feels without saying, the disciple who loves without demanding. And perhaps you, throughout your life, have experienced this type of fidelity. Maybe you've been there for people in moments that no one else could bear. Maybe he was silent when everyone was shouting. Perhaps he remained silent in the face of injustice, not out of omission, but out of reverence for the suffering of others. And this type of attitude does not go unnoticed before God. Heaven recognizes those who remain without making a fuss, those who decide to love without expecting recognition. The call to intimacy with God also passes through these places, not just through beautiful words or eloquent prayers, but through silences full of surrender. There are times in spiritual life when the most powerful thing we can do is simply remain. Without understanding, without demanding, just be. And in this being, God reveals to us things that are not accessible to those passing by. John was intimate enough to see what no one else saw, hear what no one else has heard. Jesus did not speak to the other disciples at that time. He spoke to John. And this teaches us something important. God speaks to those who are close, and being close sometimes means being silent. It's about being available. It means not needing explanations to continue. It's not needing promises to stay. It's just knowing that that's your place, and that you will remain there until the end. Joan's silence at that moment echoes to this day. It's a testimony that true love doesn't need to prove anything. It just remains. Maybe you think you haven't done great things for God because you aren't in the spotlight, but heaven sees its permanence. See your silence, check your delivery. And that speaks volumes. It speaks louder than many empty screams. It speaks louder than appearances. Joan represents those who remain, those who feel, those who do not retreat in the face of suffering. And if today you feel like you are in that place of silence next to Jesus, know that that is exactly where he trusts his greatest secrets. Intimacy is born from presence, and the presence is often silent, but it is never empty. Silence at the foot of the cross is a language that only intimates understand. And John, in his silence, spoke from the heart of God. Maybe you are being called to this kind of walk, One where the words diminish but the depth increases, where what matters is not being heard by men, but being perceived by God. And if so, embrace this calling, because it is in the silence of the cross that the heavens open to reveal what noises could never show. John remained at the foot of the cross, and many would think that his mission would end there, but in fact, it was just the beginning. Because those who remain in moments of pain are exactly those who God chooses to trust with the greatest secrets. Years after the crucifixion, when many had already left, John was still standing strong, now no longer at the foot of a visible cross, but exiled on a lonely island, far from everyone, far from the noise, but closer to heaven than ever. It was on Patmos that God revealed the apocalypse to John. The same John who wept at the foot of a cross was John who saw the heavens opened. The same one who remained silent in the face of pain was the one who heard trumpets, angels, visions, seals, and eternal promises. There is a pattern to this. God reveals himself in a profound way to those who have already proven that they are capable of remaining. John did not receive revelation for status or prominence. He received it because he continued, because he didn't give up. Because you understand that what seems like the end sometimes is just the portal to a new beginning. On Patmos, John was alone. There were no crowds, no temples, no ministries, just him, his faith, and the Spirit of God. And it was in this place of exile that heaven decided to speak. This teaches us something very powerful. There are revelations that only happen in solitude. There are secrets that God only shares when we move away from everything and everyone. John was separated, but not forgotten. It was isolated, but not ignored. The isolation that should have silenced him only made space for the sky to speak more clearly. How many times do we feel that the silence around us is a punishment, when in fact it is preparation? João may have thought that his story was already over, but the sky still had a lot to show, and these were not common views. They were visions that would shape the hope of generations, that would strengthen the faith of millions, that they would prophesy the end and the beginning of all things, and they were handed over to the same João who decided not to run away. This shows us that fidelity has eternal fruits, that today's silent love can turn into revelation tomorrow, that the tears of now can become prophetic visions at the right time. But it all starts with the choice to stay. John stayed. John listened. John wrote. John marked eternity. And that was no coincidence. It was the fulfillment of a trajectory marked by presence, loyalty, and silence. God is still looking for people like John, people who endure deserts, who go through exiles, who endure loneliness without losing faith, people who don't give up halfway through, which continues even without an audience, who loves it even without music, who prays even without an answer, because it is to these that he reveals what is hidden. It is to these that he shows what is to come. It is to these that he entrusts visions that shake hell and strengthen the heavens. John received the greatest eschatological revelation in the Bible, not because he was the most influential, but because it was the most reliable. And this reliability is not built overnight. It is shaped in pain, in waiting, in the repetition of apparently identical days. But the sky is watching. The eyes of God roam the entire earth, searching for faithful hearts. And when they find a John, even if hidden, even if forgotten, he reveals himself with power. Patmos was not an end. It was a platform. The cross was not defeat. It was the way. João's silence was not cowardice, it was spiritual maturity, and all of this resulted in apocalypse. In visions of thrones, thunder, crowds dressed in white, promises of justice, new earth and new heaven. John saw what no one saw because he decided to stay when no one else did. Maybe today you feel like you're on an emotional island, isolated, far from what you dreamed of, away from people, far from the results I expected. But what if this is exactly the place where heaven wants to visit you? What if this silence that surrounds you is the space that God is creating to speak to you? Jerome proved that it is possible to receive life's greatest revelations in the most unlikely moments. When everything seems stagnant, the sky may be getting ready to open up. God still speaks to those who remain. He still visits those who don't back down. It still reveals mysteries to those who persevere. And perhaps, like Jerome, you are on the doorstep of something that will transform not only your story, but that of many others. Just continue. Just be present. Just remain firm, even when everything around you seems empty, because it is exactly this void that God fills with eternity. John's story confronts us because it forces us to choose. You cannot remain neutral before the cross. Either you stay or you run away. And looking honestly, how many times have we run away? How many times have we left someone's pain without comfort because we thought it was safer to walk away? How many times have we abandoned our spiritual posts, our responsibilities, our callings, because it seemed too hard to bear? John is the exception that reveals the pattern. He stayed, the others left. And now each of us is called to answer, who have we been? This question echoes to this day. Who have you been? Jerome or the others? Not as an accusation, but as a summons. Because all of us, at some point in our lives, will be brought to that decision point. Faced with pain, injustice, loneliness, exposure, what will we do? Will we remain by Christ's side, even when it costs us everything? Or will we retreat in search of security, approval, or momentary comfort? The cross continues to be the place where intentions are revealed. It's easy to follow Jesus when there are miracles, when there is multiplied bread, calmed storms, applause, and crowds. It is difficult to follow him when everything is silent, when the answer is silence, when the crowd disappears, when the hands that healed are now pierced. And it is in this scenario that true disciples prove themselves. John was there, not to see miracles, but to honor the presence of the one he loved. And this honor said more than any cry of faith. Maybe you are in a moment like this right now, a moment where following Jesus seems more lonely than inspiring, where the applause has ceased, the confirmations have disappeared, and all that remains is his presence, shrouded in silence and blood. What will you do? Will he run away like so many did, or will he remain like Jerome? There is no middle ground. Either you come closer to the cross, or you move away. Either you identify with the crucified one, or you hide among the crowd. It's uncomfortable to realize that the other apostles loved Jesus, but not enough to stay, that even those closest to us can be absent at times when we need them most. But it is also liberating to understand that God does not require a crowd. He looks for one that stays, one that supports, one who understands, one who loves without conditions, one that, even when scared, doesn't give up, one that you are willing to follow through to the end. And the question now turns to you. When things get tough, where will you be? When your faith is tested, when your name is put to the test, when your feelings are hurt, when God's presence seems distant, what will you do? Will you keep your eyes fixed on the cross, or will you look away from what is easier? Will you remain silent, or seek explanations that ease your conscience? Will you love until the end, or only love until it is convenient? This choice is not made once in a lifetime. It is done every day. It is in everyday life that we reveal who we really are. It's in the way we treat others. It's how much we dedicate ourselves to invisible things. It is in the loyalty that we maintain when no one is watching. Jerome was not left to be remembered. He stayed because he loved it. And true love doesn't need a reason to stay. He simply chooses to stay. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the strongest. But you need to decide. And this decision changes everything. It determines what heaven will see in you. It shapes the kind of mission God can trust you with, because God does not share his inheritance with those who are always ready to leave. He delivers to those who remain even without reward, To those who understand that true glory is not in escaping pain, but in enduring it with dignity, today you have a new chance, a new opportunity to decide what your position will be. And this decision cannot be made with nice words. It is done with daily attitudes, with constant presence, with silent resignations, with gestures that no one applauds, but that heaven celebrates. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, but you need to show heaven where your heart is. John showed. He didn't promise. He did. He didn't speak. He stayed. It was not driven by fear, but by love. And that changed everything. Maybe now is your time to decide too, because before the cross, no one goes unnoticed. Who are those who remain? What kind of heart carries within it the silent strength that John revealed? Throughout history, men and women like him stood out not because of great visible deeds, but because of constant, discreet attitudes and marked by deep love. The profile of those who remain is the opposite of what the world values. They are people who do not shine to be seen, but who hold the light where it seems to have gone out, who support the invisible with faith, who embrace the simple with reverence. Those who remain have an essential characteristic: constancy. Not perfect constancy, but honest constancy. They may even falter, but they come back. They may get hurt, but they don't abandon them. There is a deep commitment in his gestures, something that does not depend on external circumstances. True believers do not decide based on emotion, but on conviction. Abiding is not about feeling. It's about believing. And those who truly believe remain, even when everything falls apart. Another strong mark of those who remain is their spiritual sensitivity. They don't look for loud signals. They recognize God in silence. They understand when it is time to be quiet and when it is time to speak. They know how to discern the times, and therefore they support the processes. Those who have this sensitivity know that the sky speaks in subtle ways. And that's why they don't give up just because the noise stops. They hear God's voice even when it seems like a whisper. This is something that can only be acquired in intimacy. John was like that. These people also have something that has almost disappeared: stageless loyalty. They do not serve God for status, for benefit, for visibility. They serve out of love. They love without the spotlight. They pray without an audience. They take care without being noticed. They are the invisible supporters of many spiritual environments. While others feed on the applause, the faithful live on their knees, sustaining things that many cannot even imagine. And heaven knows each one of them. Those who remain, in general, know well what it is like to not be understood. They do not need to be validated to follow. They are often called too intense, too spiritual, too silent, but that doesn't stop them, because your motivation comes from above. They were touched by something bigger. They felt the weight of the cross and decided they could not ignore it. So they remain, not because it's easy, but because they know there is something sacred about it. You can recognize these people easily. They have a steady look, words that heal, presences that comfort. They carry authority even when they say nothing. And above all, they have a teachable spirit. They know they are still learning. They don't think they're superior, but they know they were called to a deep place. John had it all, and you can have it too. It's not about becoming someone perfect. It's about choosing a path of fidelity. A lifestyle where the most important thing is not to be applauded, but to be found faithful. Those who remain do not compete. They edify. They don't promote themselves. They protect. They don't seek position. They support the ones they already have. They are the ones who hold the ropes in the middle of the storm, those who don't abandon ship. Those who prefer the uncomfortable truth to the comfortable lie. Those who remain have also learned to wait. They don't run after promises desperately. They know that everything has a time. And while they wait, they remain. As long as they hurt, they remain. While they lose, they remain. This waiting transforms, it matures, deepens, shapes. God entrusts these hearts with things that could not be given to those who give up easily. John waited and saw the sky open. This was no coincidence. It was loyalty sustained for years. The profile of those who remain is not made up of large demonstrations, but of small daily acts. He is someone who prays even when he doesn't feel like it, who loves even when he is not loved, that serves even when it is not recognized, who returns to the place of prayer even after crying in frustration there. João is that portrait, and each of us is invited to become one too. Maybe you're wondering, am I that person? And the answer is simple. If you are still here, if you are still trying, if you are still searching, then you already carry within you seeds of permanence. Now it's time to cultivate, to strengthen, to mature, because difficult days come, but those who remain until the end. John taught us that true faithfulness doesn't need to be loud, it needs to be firm. He stayed when no one else had the courage. He chose love over fear, presence above security, and that was exactly what made him worthy of receiving eternal revelations. Throughout this video, you saw that it is not perfection that moves the sky, but permanence. It is not the public performance that matters, but the silent delivery. You also saw that God does not forget those who remain, that heaven records every faithful act, even if no one else sees it, that there are rewards reserved for those who support the process with maturity and confidence. And perhaps now it is clear you are not here by chance. If this message has reached you, it is because God is calling you to live this type of fidelity that marks generations. Now, the time has come to act. If you're truly committed to staying strong, even when everyone else gives up, prove it right now. Leave it in the comments. I will remain next to the cross. This sentence is not just a comment. It's a statement, a commitment, a sign that you belong to the select group of people that God trusts. And as a form of recognition for your decision, we at the channel will leave a like on your comment and follow your progress. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any content like this, which could be exactly what your spirit has been waiting for so long. Let's go, sign up now, and walk with us on this journey of faith, courage, and constancy. What was the code that turned the key inside you? Comment below. We want to know which part spoke most to your heart. And if this video reached you, share it with as many people as possible. Be generous. Just as you were blessed with this content, bless other lives. And what comes next could be the missing step for you to experience the transformation you have always sought. Now watch the 2 videos that are appearing on your screen. Each of them is like an essential piece of this divine code that is being revealed to you. Don't miss this opportunity. The next minute could change everything.